My name is Wyatt Graham, and I'm joined with Yanick Ethier, and we are here to talk about friendship for the TGC Canada podcast. I've known Yanick for a little while, and I've kind of begun to be a friend to him. But Yanick's also had a number of friendships that he's talked about or mentioned or I've seen. And it's just kind of an interesting thing that he's done because I think many of us who are, done college, done high school, struggle to make and maintain friendships. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk to Yanick and ask him about how he's made friends and how he's maintained friendships. So, Yannick, thank you for talking with me. And I'll just start by
My
asking a
pleasure.
question. And it's just,
Sure.
how do you make new friends? And then also, how do you keep those friendships strong? So that's just how I'll ask very broadly.
Yeah. So maybe I'll step back just a little bit before that and say that um, it might sound a little bit too simple, but at the same time, I think it's very important. I've learned through the years to um, really see my brothers and sisters in the church as brothers and sisters, and they're all on some kind of a spectrum of friendship with me. And this has been more and more important to me because I really am blessed with deep and wonderful friendships, and I'll share that with you. But at the same time, I've noticed through the years that most of the same principles would be applied because the friendships I'm 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 blessed with are really founded and yeah, they're founded on the gospel, so those principles are the same in the church. So I like to see all of my relationships in the church with my brothers and sisters on a spectrum of friendship, and to me they're all brothers and sisters and friends. And the more I've been serving the same church for 25 years, so I would say that I have many friends now in the church. And maybe the difference I would make, which I don't even know, we can do that difference distinction from the Bible, because Jesus called us his friends. Uh, um, so the distinction maybe I would make is the kind of intimacy
Mm.
um, that you will find in a relationship. Um, it's very strange. The same principles I use in my closer relationships I use with the elders board, and I can say that all of those guys are friends. And when we go on an elders retreat, we really go very deep in our relationship. We'll share things. So it's always the same principles that are there, I think. And then some of those relationships go maybe much deeper. So what are those principles?
Right before you get there, let me just
Yeah,
repeat something you said. I think it's helpful, and you can kind
sure,
of think through
sure.
the principles as I'm talking.
Yeah,
Um, you mentioned that friendship is really based on the gospel. Jesus
yeah,
calls us friends. And there's a real
yeah,
sense in which we are, like, if you're in a church, you're kind of objectively friends with everyone in terms of that status.
yeah,
Kind of like when you're saved, you're objectively saved, and then you kind of live that out. And
yeah,
so maybe there's a way to put it this way, that when you become a Christian, you are objectively friends with everyone, but then subjectively, you have to kind of experience that friendship by certain acts, by talking to people, inviting them over, going for coffee, watching a movie, or whatever it is. I think that's maybe kind of a helpful, the
it
way that
is.
you said is kind of helpful for me to kind of conceptualize of the
Yeah,
gospel
yeah,
grounding.
yeah, it is. And I think that the main difference that I've experienced in some of my friendship would be the kind of engagement we have with one another. uh, how far are we ready to go to spend some time together and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
um, because one thing that is very I'm searching for my words, so sorry. Évident. How do you say this? Évident.
Evident.
Evident. Thank you. So one thing that's very evident for me after so many years of being in the church, and I just passed 50 now. Um, my best friendships uh, are not hobbies related. There are no special interests. In fact, I would say that my best friendships, if the gospel was not there, most probably we would not be friends. And I have good relationships with some non-Christians in my family, and even some I would call friends. But there are some places where we can never go, and there are some things that some tools that the gospel gives us to deepen a relationship and rebuild where when sometimes there are some hurts that are brought up in the relationship that I would not have with them, or not at the same level.
Hmm.
So the gospel is really at the center of those relationships. And I'm not trying to sound more spiritual by saying that. All I'm saying is that there's a passion for two souls to connect deeply, and the point of connection is the gospel, is Jesus Christ. And so I find that in the church. I find that with the board of elders, with co-pastors here, and I find it with some friends with some of them we even took a covenant together,
Hmm.
almost like my marriage with my wife, and we had to ask our wives if they allowed us to take such a covenant together, you know.
You know, it's
So
really
yeah.
what's interesting about that is I don't know if you knew this, but I think it's in some early Baptist churches. They actually used to go to the front of the congregation and do a friendship covenant together. So maybe you did know that. Okay, maybe that's where you got the idea. Which I find interesting because for me, in the 21st century, as kind of a younger adult, that would feel really weird for me to walk up with a friend in front of a congregation and be like, "I commit to you as my friend."
Mm, mm,
Um, and yet, it wasn't apparently weird for people. And if you look across history, there's been some amazingly close friendships that have developed that are in some ways similar to a marriage. Not obviously with all the factors, but some of the closeness, some of the openness, some of the commitments there. So maybe can
yeah.
you talk to that? Like, what do you mean by you made a covenant with some friends?
Well, uh, let me start with the way I understand love in Christianity. It's we love without condition. We give ourselves. We get uh, into an engagement with our wife, and we'll say, I'm going to love you without any condition, and you will try and do the same. And so this is where we bring the gospel in our relationship. That's the way I see any real and good relationships, any real and good friendships. So um, so that's what I did. In fact, the year of my conversion, when I was 19, I met a young man in the church. We became friends. He was a little older than me in faith and more
Mm-hmm.
mature than me, but we really connected then. And so I wasn't even married. And we took a vow together to befriend each other until the Lord come and takes either one of us. And the vow we took is that we would always be there for each other. We always would take care of each other and help us and help each other grow in Jesus till the Lord takes us apart. And so we did that. I was 19, and that relationship suffered a lot through the years,
Mm.
mostly on my part, I would say. And at one point, I really had to sit down with my friend and say, you know what, I I hurt you so much. I don't know if we're going to be able to build it up again and start afresh. And that's so it's very coincidental that we have this discussion today, because last week I went for a walk with him, and he just told me, and I'm getting emotional just remembering that. He just told me, you know what, Yannick, I really believe that we will be able to honor our covenant,
Hmm.
and we will be faithful. So it took many years to build back that relationship, uh, um, but it's still an engagement that we took before the Lord. And later on, a few years later, after I was married, I met two guys who were training for pastor to be pastor, and we took the same vow, the three of us together, with the agreement of our wives, because that meant that I would give all access to those guys to my life. So what was in that that vow? We committed to be fully transparent. We allowed the other two guys to come in our lives at any time, asking any question on any matters, and we vowed that we would be there for each other. So at that time, François Turcotte, whom you know, or me, was pastoring a church in Fermont,
Hmm.
which is 16 hours north of Montreal. And
Wow.
and just to make sure that we agreed, we said, if you call us, we'll be there tomorrow. Just tell us you need us by your side, wherever you are. Give us 24 hours, we'll be there. And this was just a way for us to understand how far we were going. So we saw the roles of each other as watchdogs, as friends, as counselor. And what we do is that we go on retreats twice a year for a few days, read books, pray together, share. We're accountable to each other. And sometimes the relationships are hard. Some of us are suffering. One of us might be suffering and just doesn't feel he wants to share anything or be there even. But we stuck to it because we took that vow before the Lord. And I can say with great confidence that I really don't know if I would still be in pastoral ministry without those friendships. So that's pretty intense. I do understand that there are not many guys or even women who would do the same thing. Maybe it's too intense for many, but still, without taking a covenant, I think the same principles can apply.
That's helpful. And I think one thing that you've done, I think for people hearing this, is you've said you can take friendship seriously even from 19 to, you said you're 50, right? 19 to 50,
Yeah,
30 years,
yeah,
30 or so years, and it's possible. And I think
it is.
for many people, even though what you said is a stronger version of friendship than we're used to, you've evinced that it's entirely possible. And in fact, historically, you know it's possible. People did similar things all the time, maybe not with covenants, but with strong friendships. And I do think we're missing something when we don't obligate ourselves as friends.
Mm-hmm,
Because to
mm-hmm.
be a friend, in my mind, means more than an acquaintance. And there's an obligation of care for one another that it's kind of implied, at least in a friendship. So as we kind of close down this podcast conversation, maybe I could ask you this question. You can kind of talk to it. Is what you have done in terms of covenantal friendship, would you recommend that to believers? And if you would recommend it, how would you tell someone, like, how do you find the right friend to choose? Like, what are you looking for when you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I would say don't rush into it because it's something very serious to take a vow before the Lord. At the same time, I think those vows kept our friendship, just as my vow before the Lord kept my friendship with my wife, and our relationship. But what I would say is that um, be generous. Be generous with some people whom you find inspiring, and be generous of your time and of yourself, and invest in really maybe at first a casual friendship, but ask the Lord to lead you to people who inspire you. Um, when I'll compare that to my relationship with my wife. When I became Christian and got married 2 years later, and I had really a frivolous life in the world. And when I became Christian, I told the Lord, by your grace, I won't go out with many young girls before I marry one. And so I was praying, and I was asking the Lord, just show me the girl I will love, but who will love you even more than she loves me. And I had noticed my wife, Esther. We were in the youth group and everything. And at one point, we were praying with the youth. And I just heard her pray. And I thought, that girl will always love Christ more than she will love me. And so she will always pull me up to Christ, pull me toward Christ. And why I'm sharing that is because that's what I search in friendships. I'm looking toward a man who would inspire me and whom I would envy their closeness with the Lord. And obviously, we have our ups and downs, so it's not constant, but I'm attracted to those kind of guy to befriend them, and then I'll be generous with them. I'll give my time. We'll be very casual, and if we see something's coming up, maybe we'll go on a few days of retreat and say, let's take a prayer retreat together. Let's share it. Let's read a book together. Let's see how can we challenge ourselves, and this would be the first steps that I would be taking toward moving that trend. And I don't think you have to have um, any hobbies that you love. I think Christ is at the center of that relationship. Yeah.
Mm. Well, that's helpful, Yanick. Thank you so much for talking to me. Again, I love being able to have these conversations on some really pieces of practical wisdom. And I think friendship is very practical, and yet maybe we don't have a lot of avenues where we can freely talk about friendship. So thank you
Yeah.
for opening up this one that we could have. And blessings to you, friend. Thanks again.
Thanks, Wyatt.